Hey, this is Rich over at TVP Live with another quick tips tutorials brought to you by Photoshop Elements Custom Tutorials Group. And let's jump right in with today's poster. Want us to know how to remove the glare on this Corvette because they're trying to make a sublimation and the glaring parts keep on coming out white. So basically what's happening is it's really not red. It's almost white here. So a lot of this stuff is going to come out as white. So what you want to do is bring out the reds more vibrant. So there's a couple things that we can do. If you have Photoshop Elements, I believe 21 and above, you want to make sure you pick the right layer. Go to Enhance. And down here, there's something called Haze Removal. And that's going to make it more vibrant. It's not going to take the white out. As a matter of fact, it might make it worse, but you really want to make this more vibrant if you want it to make a sublimation out of it. So I'm going to hit haze removal and it's going to give us a before and after. Look at that. You can see how much more brighter that red is compared to the original. And then it gives you a little before and after. See that? It looks so much better after. And I can change the sensitivity and haze reduction even a little bit more because I want to do high contrast. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK and watch the photo. Boom, it made it much more vibrant. Now that we got it sharper and vibrant and shiny looking, let's get rid of some of the red. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up into different sections so that the red does not look exactly the same overall. So the part of the hood right here that's kind of white, I'm going to make it darker. I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool and pick something really dark, deep red, something like right around here. And now we see it over here in the color palette. I'm going to create over here on the layers. I'm going to click it and create a new layer on top of the Corvette layer. On that new layer, I'm going to come back over here, grab a brush, come down here, and make sure the brush is a soft brush. If you start at the top, they're all hard brushes, but if you scroll down just a bit, you get a bunch of soft brushes. So I'll click at 100 point over here, and you can see that's kind of too small. I actually want to triple that. I'm going to change that from 100 to 300, and you can see how big that is. And it's okay if we capture a little more, as long as we get this all nice and darker red. So I'm going to go like this and paint from the hood all the way down to here, just grabbing the hood, everything on the hood like that. And then I want to be able to cut out everything that I don't want. So I'm going to take that layer, go to the opacity, bring that opacity down right around here so you kind of just barely see it at about 35%. Go ahead and grab the eraser again. Now we want a small eraser, a soft eraser down here at about 15 point. I'm going to zoom in here. And this front right edge here, I want that soft. So I'm going to make that eraser a little bit bigger, something like 25 point. You see how big that is? And that way it's kind of melds into that corner there. And it's not too harsh. And I'm basically erasing away a portion of what I overdrew, that big red splotch. Come down here. I want to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to do shift click so I can go along this line like that all the way to the edge. Now this top edge I want to do a little sharper, so I'll change that from 25 down to about a 10 point soft edge, and I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit and do that top edge starting from up here. I'm going to come across here and I'll do shift click. When I have a straight lines to do, it's easier to do shift click, and what I'm doing is I go click, I hold down the shift, come down here and hit click, and it does a whole section at a time. Then you just continue doing that. Shift, click, click, shift, click, click, shift, click, until you get all the way down to the end of what you want to be colorized. And then once again, let's go to the top and come across this edge here. When I get to the end here, I've gone around the whole hood there. I want to delete everything beyond what we did. So I'm going to go to the opacity, bring it back up to 100%. We're not going to use it at 100%, but we need it to be able to know what to delete. And this is kind of hard to see because it's red on top of red. So I'm going to put a fake mask in between these two layers. I'll come down to the bottom layer, add an empty layer here, come over to the color palette, and we'll choose pure black. Hit OK, hit the paint bucket and click in here and you'll see what happens. Boom. Now we got a mask layer in between these two layers, and that just gives me a contrasty background to be able to cut out everything that we don't want. Now we want to grab the polygon tool and make sure it's not the lasso tool down here, but the polygon. I'm going to zoom in, and now I just kind of trace in between the two, and that's really easy to do. And once we get to the end here where the polygon matches up to itself, I'll just double click and it'll create the marching ants. I'm going to zoom out so you can see what we're going to do. In the middle, I'll right click and I'll hit select inverse. This will select everything else but the center. Now I want to make sure I got the right layer that I'm deleting, which is going to be the actual outside on the red layer here. I'm going to hit delete and boom, it erased everything else but the hood. I can turn off that false mask. We'll use it again later, so I'll turn that off. And now we see the hood, but it's pure red. We don't want it to look pure red because it doesn't look real. So let's go ahead and take the opacity and bring that all the way down, and you see what happens. Now it's back to the way it was before. I'm going to bring it up little by little until we're satisfied. If the printer we're sending this to says that it's white, then you just come back and bring this up a little bit and send them a version with it a little bit darker. I like it at about 65%. And look at the before and after. That's looking really nice. Now all we got to do is make another one for this front piece and this whole side panel. So I'm going to create a whole new separate layer. Go grab the brush, come down here, make sure it's a soft brush. That's at 300 point. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to basically paint that in. And then I'll just do another one to paint this side panel in. Just like that. And I might want to do the front, bottom, and the side panels down here on a third pass. So let's go ahead and bring that opacity back down to really low so we have something to trace out. And then grab the eraser, make sure it's a small eraser. I'm going to zoom in. And with the eraser, change that to like a 15 point. And I'm going to erase along this black rubber strip. And that's looking pretty good. Once we meet where we started, once again like before, I'm going to turn this all the way up to 100% and then turn on that black mask which I had right here. And now I'm going to turn off the hood part, which is right there, and it allows us to see exactly what we need to cut out. I'm going to grab the polygon tool once again. I'll zoom in and start right around here. Once I get to the end here, like before, I'm going to double click. I'll zoom out. Remember, I want to make sure I choose the right layer that I'm going to delete, which is this one. And also remember to right click and select inverse. So it selects everything beyond what I've chosen. I'll hit delete and boom, there we go. I can do Control D to deselect. Turn off that black mask and look what we got. Nice and red. Obviously it's too red, so we're going to take the opacity, bring it down all the way, and then slowly creep it up and see what happens. See how all the glare, the white glare, is turning more red. I think at about 60% is looking pretty good. Let's turn on that hood one again, and boom, this is looking a lot better. And finally, once again, we'll make a third layer to create a red mask to cover all of the bottom edge here. Once again, we're going to bring that mask down to a very low number, like at about 40%. And then grab the eraser, and now we got to erase everything else out. I'm going to turn off the other two masks that we've created so we kind of have an idea of where we're going. And like before, I'm going to start here. Now that I've got this all traced out, I can turn on my black mask again and turn the opacity all the way up to 100% on that red layer, and now we know exactly what we need to cut out. Now we got separate pieces to delete, so we can't use the inverse delete. So we got to do these manually and delete. So now if I were to trace this and hit delete inverse, it would delete everything else on the left side here. So what I got to do here is pick a portions at a time to actually delete of that background. I can just kind of come down here like that and double click and hit delete instead of choosing inverse. Now we'll do this portion here. Double click, delete. Now we can do this portion here and delete. And lastly, we'll do the end piece here. I can cross over itself to make sure I get everything and hit delete. I'll hit Control D to deselect, and there's our panel pieces for the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the black mask, and we have the panel piece here at 100%. Watch the car as I go back to 0. I'm going to bring it back up a little bit, and you can see it's really filling in. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn on the other two and then use those as a template of how much I turn up the bottom piece. It's turning it all right. If I go too high, I lose definition. You don't want it that high. You want it down to about 35%. That's looking pretty good. Here's the before, after, before, after. So now I got each of these panel at a different opacity level. That bottom panel is at 35%. The middle panel, you can see, that's looking pretty good. That one's at 55%. And the top panel is at 60%. That's looking pretty good. But I do want to fix these little portions down here. So I'm going to create yet another layer underneath that's going to be more pure red. So I'm going to zoom in here, and with a small 40 point or so, and I'll do a shift click, and that fills in those little portions that were scratched. And that takes care of those scratches on that front panel. Well, lastly, I'm going to show you the before and after. Here's the before picture of the Corvette, and here's the after, all painted in, really nice and bright and shiny. Well, that's it for this tutorial. This is Rich, calling it quits, saying over and out.